Hey, hey, Omar here again. Oh man, to really understand cycling in Chicago, we have to go to the beginning to the beginning to the beginning to the beginning. No, to the beginning. Ah, yeah, the beginning. You have to go back all the way to the beginning. And I think you guys got the reference with the beginning. If you have seen the viral video, you know where it's coming from. Anyway, side note, I have to do these little dad jokes every now and then. Some people get it, some people don't. It's okay. But anyway, today we're here with somebody who has been biking for a very long time in Chicago. He has seen it change, evolve, see people come, people go. He has seen it all. And today we're going to learn about that. Okay. So sit back, relax, and we're going to have a fantastic conversation about Chicago cycling. And we have somebody that's in the network, and this is what makes Chicago a beautiful place. Somebody who's been here for a very long time and has seen it all. Thank you guys for subscribing, for watching the videos, helping me spread the word. It's been a beautiful journey. I'm learning so much about different people and places and things in Chicago that I had no, imagination I'll get to this place. But here we are today. So, with no further ado, please introduce yourself, drum roll, because it's gonna be awesome, guys.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me on this interview. My name is Ed Reed. I've lived in Chicago since 1976. I've been cycling since probably the late 60s. Actually, I've been cycling all my life, but seriously since about 1968. In several states. I've started cycling in Ohio, in central Ohio, where there's this fantastic network of back roads. So it was just a wonderful place to cycle. Then I moved to eastern Pennsylvania, which had an even more wonderful network of back roads and lots of hills. So, and then I moved to Chicago in 1976 to come to graduate school. And just prior to coming to Chicago, I had ridden my bicycle across the United States. I was working in Pennsylvania. I took the summer off. I rode from Virginia to Oregon, rode 4,200 miles, and then came here and discovered cycling in the flatland. And I must say, that was quite an adjustment for me because I was used to riding in hills, and I love riding in hills. I love climbing. I love even more descending. And in Illinois, you basically have headwinds and tailwinds.
That's right.
And flat. So it was a big adjustment. And it was really a big adjustment for my backside because you spend more time just sitting on the saddle as opposed to being out of the saddle or putting more pressure on your feet through pedaling uphill. So it was a huge adjustment to be here. And there was a point in time I said, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. I was also running at the time. I was living in Hyde Park, going to school at the University of Chicago. And I used to run and cycle up and down the lakefront. I couldn't figure out where else to go in Chicago to do that. So I alternated my time between cycling and running. And I almost gave up cycling because I felt like it was just too difficult in this city to find a good place to ride. But I kind of kept going, and I would drive out into the country and ride there. And prior to moving here, most of my cycling had been kind of a solo effort. Mm-hmm. I have to say, so I was mainly cycling in the late 60s and early 70s. And cycling culture was very different then.
I can't imagine.
So, first of all, there was very little information that you could find as an average person.
You guys didn't have Strava?
Cycling.
You guys didn't have Strava?
No Strava, no internet, no social media.
No cell phones?
No cell phones. And cycling, and particularly racing, was like this secret society. I'm not kidding. The information was kind of held by guys in the bike shops. And if they kind of perceived you maybe had some talent and maybe you could race,
then they let you in.
Then they let you into their club. If they didn't perceive you that way, they just, you were just a regular customer. And I was sort of kind of new to the whole cycling seen in terms of the way it happens in groups and the way it happens in racing. So I just kind of did my own thing. And I got really interested in kind of touring long distance. So that was kind of my thing. And in college, I rode a lot in college. I only met one guy in college who raced. He had his own little secret club. And he would have conversations with me about his name, by the way, we called him Cosmic Bob. That was his name. And he had this wonderful, I don't know what kind of bike it was, but there was a wonderful steel bike that he had, I don't know, he did to the frame what people do to guns. It's like a bluing process or something. Anyway, it's pretty exotic. And he had all Campagnolo components, which was, in that day was sort of
a big thing.
Big deal.
Yeah.
And nobody could afford it. I couldn't afford it. So he was sort of the guy I looked up to.
So
but he never invited me on a ride.
I was supposed to ask you, Cosmic Bob never invited you?
No.
Your bike was cool enough or something?
No, I don't know what was going on. I had a touring bike. I didn't have a racing bike. So, so I just kept going on my own and riding with other friends. And in the early 70s, I don't know, the cycling world has gone through sort of these little surges or bike booms. So more people started riding in the early 70s. Some of my friends got bikes, so I would ride with my friends. I was always riding further and longer and whatever, but I had a few people to ride with. Didn't know anything about drafting. Didn't know anything about group riding.
So back then, when you were drafting, you're like, am I going to go fight a war or something?
Yeah, so it was this sort of solo activity. And I've always enjoyed, even as a small child, being outside. I just love being outside. So cycling was perfect for me as a way to stay in shape.
And you're basically a climber.
Yeah, and I don't weigh very much. And in my youth, I could really climb. I could really climb fast. Now I can climb steady, maybe not so fast, but I still love it.
You get over the hill.
Yeah,
no,
and there's always the goal to get to the top, and then the reward is the descent. And I just love to descend fast, and I'm pretty good at it. I also ride motorcycles, so I'm pretty adept at cornering things. And so anyway, that's that. So riding in the hills is my thing.
All right. Let's back up.
Anyway,
so
okay.
You say you rode 4,600 miles
This year so far.
No, like in a cross country.
It was about 4,200.
4,200. Was that in one day?
No, it was a fully loaded touring bike with all my camping gear and all my stuff. I was averaging probably 11, 12 miles an hour. So no, it took a few days. It actually took 80 days.
Have you heard of the Michigami Challenge?
Yes.
Have you done it? Or will you do it?
No.
You should do it. You check it out.
I'm doing some other things this summer.
Okay.
I'll tell you about that.
We'll get it later.
But that's quite a challenge. But I think about it sometimes.
80 days.
But I heard Sarah Rice talking about it in your interviews.
Yeah. It's
250 miles a day is...
It's a chunk.
A lot.
It's a chunk.
Yeah.
I mean, they're trying to do it in what, 4 days? So
yeah.
It's going to be something.
So anyway,
yeah. So you mentioned that you did college or grad school at University of Chicago. What did you study?
Social service. I was a social worker, social service administration.
Gotcha.
So I was here at the university for 2 years, and then I started working here. Worked for a private agency, became a clinician, did a lot of therapy, kind of worked my way through the system and became an administrator and a supervisor. And I had a really great career, and always kept my hand in the clinical work.
So you said had, so you retired now?
I've been retired for about 6 years.
How's that going?
It's wonderful.
I
just enjoy it so much.
You get to ride your bike now and just have a good time.
I think of myself now as my master of my own time. So I just kind of, and the cycling actually is, has always been an interest, but now it's kind of, I almost think of, leave the house at 9 o'clock after the rush hour is over. And I say to Denise, my current partner, I say, I'm going to the office now. And I just go out and ride for 4 or 5 hours.
She said, hasta mañana.
And sometimes we ride together and sometimes not. But
Yeah, I
So
saw
the
that you guys,
cycling works great.
yeah, so
It's
I saw
for retirement.
you guys just did the Rafa 10,000 together.
Yes, we did.
How was
on
that?
last Sunday? That was
That was the first time?
no, I had actually ridden there quite a bit, and I'd done the event prior to this, but it's been a few years. And this year it was a wonderful day. Temperature was like 66 degrees. It was sunny. It was no wind. It was just a wonderful, perfect day for cycling. But I did the 86-mile version, and I did about 7,900 feet of climbing.
Yes, I did it.
And most of it was gravel,
Yes,
some gravel, some
but it was
pavement,
about what 80s 20 road
Yeah.
gravel 75
Yeah.
25. Yeah, I did the Rafa 10,000
yeah,
about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
When I didn't own a gravel bike, and I
Yeah.
borrowed a friend bike, and
yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
yeah. It's a
But
great
every
ride.
year it happened, I'm actually camping.
Yeah,
And the last time when I did it, I left the campground. I didn't come back until late evening.
Yeah.
And I got in trouble a little bit.
Oh.
So, so
okay.
it has to. So most times, all the big rides that's happening
Yeah,
is I'm always camping. Like I wanted to race to lake, this
Okay.
year again. I'm camping.
yeah,
The Rapper 10,000 was literally the day I was camping. I did it before, got in trouble. I'm like, not again. But this time though, I did get to do something really cool.
okay.
I rode my bike from Chicago all the way to the campground in Rockwood, 170 miles.
Whoa,
It
okay.
took me 10 hours and 40 minutes
Yeah,
to do it.
that's actually pretty fast.
Yeah,
That's
it was.
pretty darn fast.
I only stopped once to get water. Yeah.
Okay. So you're a long distance guy too. That's really amazing.
It wasn't my bucket list for a lot. I've always wanted to ride my bike to camping, but it never worked out.
Yeah.
But this time, like, you know what?
Yeah.
I want to ride my bike this time.
Okay.
And I pulled it off.
And you did it solo?
Solo.
Yeah.
Solo. I took me 3 bottles of water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I stopped once in Oregon.
Yeah.
And straight shot from there to Dixon, then from Dixon down to Rockwood.
Yeah.
I went up, the path took me like up north. I went up north like Highland Park and then cut across and come through, go through Barrington.
Yes.
And then go to Algonquin or whatever the place called.
Algonquin, yes.
And then come back down and navigate my way through. So that was awesome.
You're a brave guy.
One time I stopped by myself. That's awesome.
Amazing. When I do rides that long, I have to stop more frequently.
Yeah, it was, again, I was by myself and I really want to test to see how hard and I could do by myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, in all this time, and we don't sometimes stop at stoplights and everything.
Yeah.
The total stoppage time was like 30 minutes.
Right.
Because you have to stop and but 10 hours and 40 minutes, that was my moving time.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about doing some ultra stuff, which I've already do.
Sure.
Because I've been biking for not as long as you.
You've already done it. All right.
But I want to test out different things. So yeah,
okay.
Man, so did you do any crit racing?
I've done some criterium racing. Yes, I've done. So I'm sort of late to the game in a sense because I started racing at about age 40. So prior to that, I was doing, it's a lot of solo rides on a touring bike. I started doing organized like century rides and things like that. And that's where I learned, that's actually where I learned about riding in a group. So drafting.
Okay, do you know how to draft now?
Pardon?
Do you know how to draft now?
I know how to draft.
Okay, good.
So that's where I learned about all of that. And then I moved to Chicago. And the thing here is group rides. I mean,
that's the thing.
Just doing group rides. And so I started doing group rides. And I met some guys who were former racers and another guy who was a racer. And they sort of talked me into giving it a try. And I had a good friend. My wife at the time was not in favor of this, but I had a good friend who was really encouraging me to race. So I started in my 40s doing road races. There were lots of road races at that time. There are hardly any anymore, but there were road races, which were really fun. There were criteriums and there were time trials. So I did those 3 things, but not many criteriums because I always felt they were pretty dangerous.
They're still dangerous.
Yeah, and so I would pick the courses that had as few as possible 90-degree turns.
Smart.
So I would do those. And then the same guy who was encouraging me to race also raced cyclocross. And so I said, what's this cyclocross thing all about? And so I tried a few cyclocross races and just got totally hooked on cyclocross.
Because you had a running background.
A little bit of running, yeah. So I've been racing cyclocross probably for the last 30 years. And I was doing it at a time at the beginning when very few people were racing cyclocross. We had a series of races that were actually along the lakefront. Right now we still race at Montrose, but there were races all up and down the lakefront. There were races in the western suburbs. But the field size was really small. Maybe you were racing against 5 or 6 other people in your age group.
Hey, but
now it's much, much bigger.
Hey, if you age group and you get third or second, don't tell anybody that how much people in age group, because the rule is we can't let the truth ruin a good story. You got third, or second, second.
So I lived actually then at that time in Rogers Park, and then I moved to Evanston, and I got to know Lou Cohn at the pony shop.
Always here talking about
and so he kind of introduced me to what kind of bike to use. At the time I started this, there were very few cyclocross bikes. And so he set me up on a very lightweight mountain bike with narrower tires, and it was almost as fast as a cyclocross bike. So I started on that and got familiar with the bike handling and all the things required to kind of successfully complete a cyclocross race. And then the next year I switched to a cyclocross bike because they're just faster.
Wow.
So I've been kind of connected with the pony shop ever since. And in 2012, when I was 60 years old, Lou invited me to be on the cyclocross team because the national championships were happening in the Midwest, and he was trying to build a more diverse team. So he wanted some older guys on the team, and they had the local races had a 60+ racing category. So that's kind of where I started on his team. Prior to that, I had raced just on my own, what they call unattached, not a part of a team.
Wow.
But I just love cyclocross, and the other thing about me is I'm not a super fast rider. I'm sort of an average guy. I have to work really hard to train to keep up with guys like you.
Most people train really hard. They just don't say it, but we have to.
And in cyclocross, the people who do the best have the most power. It's really
a lot of punchy, surgy.
Right. That's the way it is. And that's not my style of riding, but I try my best at it. And where I make up a difference is I got really good at the technical parts of cyclocross and the bike handling, particularly in lousy weather. So the worse the weather was, the better I would do in the races. And because it's not always all about speed, and it's not always all about power. It's sort of staying upright, taking advantage of when other people are struggling. And you're sort of, there's a little luck involved too in cyclocross. So, but, and cornering in the mud is very different than cornering on the road. You want to forget your skills of cornering skills on the road, and you want to develop totally new skills about going around corners and staying upright, as opposed to leaning into the corner and just flat on your back.
So now you guys are learning. He's giving away a lot of secrets. I hope you guys make it this far. You get to learn some cool things about cyclocross.
So in all of my racing, I have to say, in my racing, my goal has always been just to become a better cyclist. What you read about racing is, well, don't enter a race unless you think you can win it or plan to win it. And that was never my goal, although I have won a few races, been on a few podiums, but most of the time I'm kind of just in the middle of things.
You won a few races. What races did you win? Can you give us? I want to know. Spill the beans.
Well, there was this series on the lakefront, and I think there was a series of races. So I won that series.
What is remember the name?
I don't even remember the name of it. This was in the early 1990s. And I tell you, one race I feel really good about that I ended up on the podium was out in a place called Pheasant Hill. It no longer is used as a cyclocross course. I think it became a huge real estate development or something. But it was a terrible day weather-wise. It was cold. It was sort of rainy, snowy. It was muddy. And the mud was so prevalent that it was sticking to everybody's bike. And that particular year, I had just purchased a new cyclocross bike, which had disc brakes and better mud clearance. And I was racing against guys who sort of had older bikes with cantilever brakes. And some of these guys were always beating me. And in this race, toward the end of the race, I noticed I would just keep passing these guys because they were stopped clearing the mud.
And you just kept on going.
And I just kept on going. And I realized I was in fourth place, and I saw the guy ahead of me who was in third.
Clearing mud.
No, he was still on his bike. He's actually a very good cyclist. And I said, okay, I'm going to try and get this guy. And I went around a corner, and as I was going around the corner, he was ahead of me, and he fell. I went right past him and ended up on the podium. So I felt really good about that race.
So back then, were they giving only 1, 2, 3, or did they 1 to 5?
Just 1, 2, 3.
Okay, good. Because I have a friend that was joking that he made a wide angle shot.
Yeah.
Because now you have like 5 people on the podium now, and I was laughing so hard when he said that.
Some of the criteriums do that now.
Yeah.
Right, and they do that at the national championships.
So you mentioned that there were a lot of road races and more races in Chicago back in the days.
They were.
So what do you think changed?
Road racing.
Yeah. So what do you think changed? I mean, you've been around it something. What do you have an idea?
So a couple things changed. One is the suburbs kept expanding. So the roads we used to race on for road racing kind of became more populated with cars because the suburbs or the ex-suburbs or whatever we call them just kept spreading. And so they could never close the roads in these local races. They did their best to inform the public, but you were always just using half the road. And they actually had a rule that you couldn't cross the yellow line.
Right.
Did that, you were out of the race. So, and they had corner marshals, and they had people directing the traffic, but there was always traffic. And the traffic just got to be unmanageable. And the places to race, it just became, you had to drive farther and farther and farther.
And people just kept on saying, yeah, it's too much. So
it just sort of died out, I think, because of urbanization. Yeah.
And gentrification and all the stuff that happened.
Yeah.
So what about the money, the pocket money back then? What was it? Were they getting good prices back then for racing? No,
amateur racing. If you win money on the podium, you basically pay your entry fee. That's about it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. At least in the Masters, and in some Masters races, they didn't even give money prizes.
It's very interesting because I would have never thought that it was because of the suburban expansion why the races died. Because I know somebody I interviewed before said one of the reasons why he thought, for example, crit racing wasn't a big thing anymore. Yeah. Because the prize money got less and less and less. Yeah. Because he said back in the days, 5, 6 of his buddies would go around and they'll just do all the races like in Chicago, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Yeah. And in a weekend, you're making like $4,000 in a weekend.
Yeah, so that's pretty amazing.
But now you do, and instead of after about 2009, 2010, you win a race, you get like a T-shirt.
Yeah, that's right, and a pair of socks.
Exactly. And the risk reward wasn't there anymore, so they stopped racing. But now we're adding that plus suburban expansion, which I would have never thought about.
And so they did these road races. They would also do time trials. Time trials were always 25 miles long, 40K. Now, when they do time trials, they seem to be shorter.
Yeah, like 10 miles.
That's about.
Yeah.
But doing a 25-mile time trial was...
Because they have no roads.
Painful.
They have no roads. That's why it has to be like that.
No roads.
There's no roads.
Yeah. So that's why I really gravitated. I mean, that's part of the reason I gravitated toward cyclocross. I think I was a little better at it. And to me, it was more fun. And I don't know, there's a different road culture in road cycling than there is in cyclocross or mountain biking. So cyclocross, everybody's suffering so much in the elements and on the course conditions that there's sort of this camaraderie that develops. And people are just friendlier and fooling around with each other and being more supportive. And that happens in mountain biking too.
By the way,
in road culture, it's different. It's like you line up at the start, nobody talks to each other. Nobody even looks at each other. So by the way, guys,
you don't mean fooling around that way, okay? That's not what you meant. You don't mean that.
Joking around. That's it. Okay. All right. So anyway, so that's why I like cyclocross. It's, and it's interesting. how few people, even cyclists, know much about cyclocross. It's just this niche sport. But it's actually grown pretty well in the Chicago area.
I mean, cyclocross is getting big now.
There's a
Also,
wonderful
gravel.
series now.
Gravel is getting
big.
It's getting big
I've
now.
done my share of that.
Because again, you don't have to worry about too much about traffic.
Right, not as much.
Which now I'm putting things in the perspective now with those expansion.
Yeah.
Gravel, right, I mean, there's no cars to mess with you other than if every time you go on a little paved road, but it's gonna be like for a mile, half a mile, but you
and
jump back on
sometimes
gravel
there's
again.
traffic on the gravel, but it's not. It's not much.
Wow, never
So
thought about that.
I do. So yeah, I do. So I divide my season up into 4 seasons. So the springtime is gravel season for me, gravel racing. Summertime is group rides and longer distance stuff on the road primarily, and then also mix in a lot of mountain biking. And the fall is cyclocross, and the winter is fat tire mountain biking when the trails are frozen.
Yes.
So you're kind of limited depending on how the winter.
I've had friends who trying to get
I do that in the winter.
Fat bike, and look, if we get a fat
really
bike,
fun.
we're probably not going to do it ride it more than 2-3 times. So I'm like, no.
Right.
So you have 4 seasons. I have 2 seasons cycle season.
Okay.
I have outdoors and I have indoors.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it.
And so I'm not an indoor cycling guy. Like I said before, I love being outside. So I'll go outside no matter what the weather is and no matter what the temperature is. And I
was like that. In the beginning, in the beginning, I was like that.
Yeah.
I got heated socks, heated gloves, heated vest, and then I'm like, and then with Cortado, we'd go and ride, and then in Highland Park, there's a Starbucks coffee in Highland Park, and then we go underground. When we buy coffee and go underground, there's a parking lot somewhere in Island where we go, and then it was cool, it was fun. I'm like, man, putting on all these clothes to go bike 16 miles, 18 miles an hour, and then I come home and I'm coughing and my fingers are frozen and my toes are frozen, and then
part of the challenge.
Yeah, not anymore.
It's getting the clothing right.
Yeah, I'm too old for that now.
Okay.
I'm too old.
Well,
And then my slogan. This is my slogan, okay?
Yeah.
I'm Jamaican.
Okay.
I'm made for the heat.
Yeah.
Not for sleet.
I like that.
So, Zwift.
Yeah.
And I mean, today was like 50 degrees. I'm like, I'm not going to go outside.
Yeah.
And I Zwift.
Right.
Okay. It's just my thing. It's just my thing. So okay. Yeah. So have you ridden any teams? Like, do you were in a team?
I'm on the Pony Shop.
So you're in a Pony Shop team. Okay. So what about back in the days? There were no such thing back in the days.
No. There were in the like when I was riding in the early 70s. There were teams. There were people racing, but not a lot. But I'm telling you, it was like these secret clubs, and you couldn't get any information.
Wow.
Now all you do is just, you look on the internet, and you get all the information you want about training, about nutrition. Everything is there. Back then, nothing.
So you tell me that back in the days, there were no ChicagoGroupRides.com.
Well, I don't know. There was not. I'm sure people were riding in groups in Chicago then, but I didn't live in Chicago then. And where I was living, there just weren't a lot of cyclists.
Secret.
And there weren't a lot of adults riding bikes, period. They kind of looked at you like you're weird. Strange. Yeah.
Especially if you're in those tights and stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, no, there's So I was also riding in the days before Lycra. There was no synthetic fabric. We all wore wool. Everything was wool. So you had wool cycling shorts, even in the summer. They had a leather.
Was it made from bear skin or lion skin or lion mane?
Yeah, sure. He had a leather chamois, just made out of leather.
Did you guys use helmet back then? Helmets?
No. Helmets. I didn't see people wearing helmets until the mid 70s, and very few people even then.
Wow.
No helmets. I rode all the way across the United States with no helmet. I mean, I would never think about that today.
Of course not. You wouldn't allow in a group ride if you don't wear a helmet.
I went, actually, there was a group of 10 people I went with, and one guy had a helmet. Wow. And he didn't wear it very often.
Even though you could ride by yourself, mind your own business, no helmet, and people like, where's your helmet?
Yeah, no, it's really,
wow.
It's a whole different world in terms of helmets. And the clothing, of course, was really different. But wool was a wonderful fabric. I still have some wool cycling jerseys, and I wear them in the cooler weather. They're wonderful. But
I wouldn't know what they
I still have one
look
pair of
like.
my wool cycling shorts. I just kept them for.
All right, send the pictures because I didn't know what that even looked like. I have no idea.
And the cycling shoes, if people even wore cycling shoes, they were extremely different. So they were made out of leather. They had leather soles. There was no carbon fiber soles, no thermoplastic, no. And so you had different pedals also. This was before clip-in pedals. You had
the one you push your foot in, right? The one that shape
basically a platform pedal that was, we called them rat trap pedals. They looked like a little cage. And then you had a cage your toes went into and a strap. And some people still use those on the track. Some people still use the straps on the track. But that was the standard way to go. And so the cycling shoes had these leather soles, and you had a metal cleat that attached to the rear of the pedal, just in a slot. So there was no float. You had to get it just right, or you'd destroy your knees. And they attached to the leather sole with nails. I'm not kidding you. Cobbler's nails. I'm not kidding. It sounds like...
Guys.
And the nails would keep falling out of the shoes. And so what I finally did is I took rim cement, because a lot of us were riding tubular tires, which is a whole nother story. And I put the rim cement on the bottom of the cleat, put that on the leather sole, and that held pretty good. And then I put the nails in, and that worked pretty good. Otherwise, the nails would fall out, your cleat would come off in the middle of a ride. It was crazy.
Yeah, I know there's a guy here, I think Sig was telling us a story when he was riding, and his shoe broke, and he literally I think he used tape and tape his foot to the pedal.
Sure.
And I think he won.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think that's the story. I remember Sig, but you can back me up.
Sure.
Do you know Sig?
I just know of him. I don't know. I probably raced with him, but I don't really know him well.
Wow. Guys, I'm learning so many things today. It's just mind blowing because here I am with our fancy carbon bikes and our fancy SPD look, Shimano, NYPD blues, all different amazing stuff.
Yeah.
But that we have to go back to the beginning to kind of see how.
So everybody was on a steel bike. You either had a choice of clincher rims with tires and tubes, or you went with tubular tires.
All right, let's go back, because there's a big thing now.
Yeah.
When we're moving away from small tires to bigger tires.
Wider tires.
What tires were you running back then? Let people know.
Right, so on my touring bike, it's funny, back then we also nothing was measured in millimeters. So I toured on a bike with an 1.25 inch tire, is what they called it. So it's probably about the equivalent of a 32
Okay, but the 30
millimeter, maybe. So that was a touring tire. So that, gave you enough volume of air, and you could put a load on load up your bike with all your camping gear, and off you went. And there were really only two types of bikes then. There were racing bikes.
And the racing bikes
were touring bikes.
Running like what, 19s back then, maybe?
Pardon?
They were running about 19s?
Yeah, probably.
Because the
19
clearance,
millimeters, maybe 21 millimeter tires. And the tubular tires, they were fantastic. The ride was wonderful on a tubular tire, and it was supple. It was but they punctured all the time.
Yeah, when you get flat, then the tire is done right, because it's
either done or you spend hours trying to find the leak and unsewing the tire and sewing it back up after you patch it. It's crazy.
And we complain about it.
Yeah, but anyway, but tubular tires we still use in cyclocross.
Track also, I think they use tubular.
Yeah, because tubular tires, they're very supple, the traction is wonderful, and you can go really low with tire pressure, which is the other thing in cyclocross is you need to go really low.
They don't be all bouncy.
And to grip in the mud.
Gotcha.
So tubular tires are still, in my opinion, superior to tubeless in cyclocross, although more and more people are using tubeless tires in cyclocross. I use them for training in cyclocross, but I race on tubulars still, and they're expensive. very expensive.
Yeah, yeah. I used to have tubular. I used to have tubular because I didn't know what tubular were, and I bought some rims in the beginning, and then I bought tube, and then I tried to fit a regular tire. And I'm like, why is this not fitting? And the guy's like, it's tubular. I'm like, what is tubular?
Yeah.
I had to go to Google, look it up. I'm like, oh, never mind. So I messed up.
So we really had two types of bikes. So there was no mountain bikes, none whatsoever. Mountain bikes didn't come along till the mid 1980s, right?
I didn't know that.
There was a touring bike which had a longer wheelbase. Touring bikes were designed to be stable at low speeds, carrying lots of weight. Racing bikes, of course, are designed to the faster you go, the better they handle. So there were just those two type bikes, and that was it.
So okay. and I guess back then when you're doing these
and they were all steel,
these long rides, 400 to 200 miles.
Yep.
No GPS. You had a map. So you had a map.
Yeah. Well,
how do you navigate back then? Yeah, I want to know.
Right. So, I mean, if you're doing local rides, you just get familiar with the route
over time.
You know. But if you were going a longer distance, you had to study the map in advance. You had to find roads that were
and you memorize that.
Traffic. No, you would carefully write down every intersection and where you were turning, and it was like a cue sheet. You would make your own cue sheet, stick it in your pocket, and then you'd refer to it as you were riding. And so it was very easy to get off course, to get lost.
I can imagine.
But that's just the way we did it for
and it
years
worked.
And years. And so the good navigation systems really are probably within, the last 5 years or so. And now that's wonderful. I mean, I rode, I did the Great Divide mountain bike route a couple years ago, and I had the whole route, 3,000-mile route, on my little computer. Yeah, turn by turn, navigated the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I did when I did my mapping from here to Rockwood.
Yeah,
I just go into Strava.
Yeah,
and I said I want to go from point A to point B.
Yeah,
it said, do you want the shortest point to point?
Yeah.
Do you want the place that people bike the most regularly and all the different things? I'm like, you know what? I want it where people go all the time. That ended up making my ride a little bit longer because
and you hit the button,
and I hit the button, and then it says, and I just stick it into my Garmin. And it just says, turn left, turn right, half a mile. I'm like, but back then, you had a piece of paper and you wrote things down.
You wrote it down on a little piece of paper. And it was better to write it down in pencil, because if you wrote it down in pen, it would get wet from your sweat, and then it would just disappear. But if you wrote it in pencil, it would stay there.
Oh, you could have wrote it in pen, but then put it in a plastic
you could do that
sheet,
too,
whatever. All right.
Anyway, anyway, the whole sport is different.
Learning a lot. Okay, so I have this question for you, because I need to know from myself, but other people know.
Yeah.
You've been biking since the dawn of man.
Yes.
How many bikes do you have now?
18. Well, and I've actually sold a few along the way, but
You have 18 bikes.
18
where
bikes.
do you put 18 bikes?
They're in Denise's basement right now. I have a little condo, 800 square foot condo. So I have a couple bikes there, but most of my bikes are in Denise's basement. I thank her very much for that.
Explain. What are some of those bikes that you have? Downshifted tube steel and
a few of them. Yeah, I have. So I still have the bike I rode across the United States on. I'll probably never sell that. That's got a lot of sentimental value.
That's priceless.
So I don't ride that much anymore, and I repainted it twice, and it looks beautiful. But I kind of hang it on my wall and just.
Have you shown it to Cosmic Bob?
No, but I have another friend who's totally into vintage bikes, so he kind of appreciates that.
I mean, I appreciate a vintage bike.
Yeah. So I kind of have a bike from every decade since I've been riding, and I have multiple cyclocross bikes. So
does that mean you're 180?
Pardon?
That means you're 180 then.
Yeah.
That's 18 bikes.
Right, 18. Well, there was a period of time I bought a lot of bikes. It was in the 1980s. I'm not sure why, but okay. So I have several cyclocross bikes. I have several road bikes from different years, vintages. I have a tandem. I have a mountain bike, just one mountain bike. I have a fat tire bike. And then I have a few bikes. Then I have a touring bike that's basically a steel cyclocross bike that makes a wonderful touring bike. So I have that set up for touring in case I need to make an escape at some point.
Yeah, ain't nothing wrong with that.
Chicago.
And escape is good.
And I have a track bike. I have a couple of fixed gear bikes.
So you still do track? You go to track? You go to track every now and then?
I do, and I last summer at age 71, I did the whole Monday night track clinic. Every Monday night, the whole summer.
In Northbrook.
And I learned a tremendous amount from these guys. And because you were practicing skills and then you were doing like practice races. And we probably do 5 or 6 races a night.
And then learn the lines of what the red and blue and yellow and pink.
Yeah,
and all
you
those
learn all of that, and you learn how to get really aero on your bike. And it was really fun. It was really fun. And they kept encouraging me to come out on Thursday night and race. And I kept saying to them, well, an old guy like me, who the heck am I going to race against? Guys like, I could be their grandfather.
Yeah, but basically to show the youngins what's up.
Oh, yeah, no. So anyway, it was fun. And it was a learning experience. And the goal was to make myself a better cyclist. And I think I succeeded at that goal.
Wow.
And it was fun. And track racing is really a blast.
So you think you're still becoming a better cyclist even after all these years of cycling? You're still getting better.
Yeah.
Wow. And
my gravel skills are getting better, and my mountain bike skills are getting always a little better. And I try to do as much mountain biking as I can, although it's
where
a long drive. Go to Palos.
Go to Palos, okay.
But it's a long drive there from here, and that's kind of, I don't know. I do it, but I always feel like, why? I'm spending as much time in the car almost as I am on the trails.
I have a big pet peeve with that one.
So it's, yeah.
If I have to drive 15 miles or 20 miles to go to a bike ride, I'm going to ride my bike there.
Right.
If it's within 25 miles, I am not driving.
Yeah. Well, Palos is like 35 from where I live, but I don't know. I love mountain biking. I love being off the road. I love being in the woods. I love the skills and the challenge of it. And, but it's, it is what it is living here. Probably if I lived in somewhere else, I'd do more mountain biking even than I do now.
Gotcha.
I get out there maybe once or twice a week. No.
Wow.
Yeah. If the weather's okay. The weather has to cooperate.
I want to retire. Can I retire, please? So any big plans for this year?
I got a couple of longer rides coming up for the summer. I got third week in June, I'm riding to Madison, Wisconsin, with a group. They're all going one way and driving back the next day. If the weather's good, I'm going to ride back. So that'll be a 300-mile weekend. And then third weekend in July I'm doing a ride from Quebec City in Quebec to Montreal and back in a weekend. That's a 600-kilometer ride. That's about 187 miles a day. A good friend.
You could so
I got talked into this one. Pardon?
Because you could so do the Michigan
I could
challenge.
probably do it. Yeah. But anyway, maybe
next
this
year.
summer.
Next year, please.
But so that's sort of my summer, and then it's of course cyclocross season. So that takes up fall. And then in January, Denise and I are working on a plan to do another bikepacking trip. That's the other thing I haven't really talked about yet is bikepacking. We're going to ride from Santiago, Chile to Tierra del Fuego, the whole length of South America.
Yeah, but Chile is like the longest country in the world, right?
Yeah, so but eventually you go far enough south in Chile, you run out of roads. Then you have to cross the Andes and go into Argentina. And you finish in Argentina. So that's the plan for like January, February, maybe a little bit into March.
when the weather is like
it's their summertime.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we'll see. We're already planning that. We started the planning for that now. We're planning the route, figuring out what we need to take, how we're going to get there, all this good stuff.
Wow.
So that part of the fun of those events is all the planning that goes into it. So
one day, I have a dream. One day now.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I had I did a lot of bicycle touring and camping when I was younger. And then sort of in the middle phase of my life, I couldn't do much of that because I was working, didn't have a lot of time off. I had a family. It was like there wasn't time to do all that stuff. And then as I retired, I realized I can start doing this touring again.
So you have kids?
Yeah, I have 2 kids.
Are you grandpa?
No, not yet. Maybe soon. I don't know. We'll see. My daughter actually lives in Oregon, Illinois, which you went through.
Yeah, no way.
She has a house there, and her husband has a condo in the city, and they go back and forth. So she's doing well.
Wow, that's
she's
awesome.
in her early 30s.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, so there was this period of time. My time was more limited, and mostly just did group rides here in Chicago. And
yeah, I'm looking forward to it because I mean, my wife is not late. I'm trying to bike, which I did get into stuff, but we just can't because my youngest kid is like 6, and I mean, I can't just leave my wife. My work schedule is kind of flexible. Yeah, but hers is not so much. I can just like, hey, I'm out, so that's why I have to, do a lot of Zwifting or early morning rides.
Right, you got to kind of sneak out of
early morning and get back home at like 7:30 to go take the kids to school and then go to work. And, But one day, I
remember all of that.
Yeah, you did it.
You had to just squeeze it in. And
exactly.
When my kids were really young, I kept riding, but I'd go for like a 20-mile ride and be back at home, and So before they were awake,
right?
That kind of thing. Right?
Same here. Or get home and wake them up.
Yeah. So as I retired, I realized I could start planning some of these longer trips again. I did a short 2-week trip in northwestern Pennsylvania. That was a wonderful ride and a lot of hills. Pennsylvania.
You're like I'm back in my elements.
Yeah. And then I did a bikepacking trip in Arkansas. Did a big loop in Arkansas that was about an 8-day loop. And then I kind of had my eye on this Great Divide mountain bike route, which is actually the longest off-road bicycle route in the world.
Wow.
It goes from Jasper, Alberta, which is Jasper National Park, all the way south to the Mexican border. And it's all in the Rocky Mountains. And it's 90% gravel and single track, and it's about 10% paved. So I did it in 3 segments. I did it.
So a lot of camping, like
you're camping most of the way. Occasionally, you just need to stay indoors to recharge your electronics and feel civilized again. But a lot of it's camping, and a lot of it's just camping off the side of the road, which we called wild camping or stealth camping. So, and on public land, you can camp anywhere.
Oh, okay.
You had to be careful not to be on private land, but and then there were campgrounds, of course. Mm-hmm. But and I did it in 3 segments. First one was from the Canadian border to Helena, Montana. Second one was from Jasper to the Canadian border. And then I finished the route by starting at the Mexican border and rode back to Helena, Montana. That was in 2023. That was a 2,100-mile ride. Took me about 48 days.
I'm hurting. I'm hurting listening to all that stuff.
It was so that was one of those bucket list things.
So was it a one and done, or you can go back to it?
I don't think I'll go back to that particular route, but the South American trip is going to have similar elements to it.
Gotcha.
And I actually, after I finished that ride in 2023, I didn't want to do another backpacking trip for a while, and now I'm ready to do it again. It's more of a mental thing.
Gotcha.
So it's so much work, and it's so difficult, and it's so much planning and so much logistics that wears you out.
So do you do anything?
So rewarding.
Do you do anything else outside of like biking, like any other activities? Do you golf? You retire? Do you golf? I don't know.
No.
Everybody does. Everybody.
There was a point in my life I tried golfing, but anyway. So in the winter, I love to go snowboarding. I go snowboarding in the winter.
Wisconsin or Colorado?
Well, both. So I used Wisconsin for training to go to Colorado, or the year before we went to Whistler in British Columbia. So usually we do one big trip in the winter, but most of what I'm doing is local. And I just love snowboarding. I learned to snowboard when I was 45 years old. I was a skier before that. And when my kids were they were about 8 to 10 years old, I said to them, okay, guys, do you want to learn how to ski or do you want to learn how to snowboard? You pick. And they, of course, picked snowboarding, which meant if I was going to do it with them, I had to also learn how to snowboard. And it's a totally different skill set than skiing. The only thing similar is you're on snow. The balance is different. Everything's different. So I learned how to snowboard, and I haven't downhill skied since I learned how to snowboard. I love snowboarding so much.
Yeah, it seemed like I was in Fraser, Colorado. Yeah. It seemed like it's a big snowboard. Big. I mean, it's downhill thing. Yeah. Whenever there is no snow. Yeah. So what they did, they basically take these little things that take the people on mountain bikes up in the hill, and then they ride back down. Like so much fun.
Yeah, that's fun.
In Fraser, Colorado.
I never tried that, but
yeah, that was awesome.
So snowboarding is big. So I enjoy cross-country skiing when the snow's right. I enjoy ice skating. I enjoy snowboarding. So I like these winter sports. I also, for a lot of my life, I sailed. I grew up, my father was an avid sailor, and every weekend and every vacation was spent on a sailboat on the Great Lakes.
Wow.
And then when I moved to Chicago, I was in graduate school, and one of my professors in school was also a sailor, and she got me started racing sailboats. So I raced sailboats for, I don't know, almost a decade or more here in Chicago.
A friend of ours that I featured before, Tony, he actually owned a sailboat, one of those expensive, things are not cheap.
Extremely costly sport. If you think cycling is expensive. But so it worked for me as a graduate student and as early in my career, because I didn't have to own a boat because I crewed for people and on their racing boats. And I did own a small boat that we raced in the harbors here in Chicago before the big boats were in the harbors and after. It's called frostbite sailing. And you race in the harbors, and you do about 5 or 6 races in a morning, and you get a lot of practice.
Do they still do it now? They still do the races now?
Oh, yeah, they still do it now.
Oh, wow.
I stopped in the mid 80s when I was starting to do more cycling, and the sailing was starting to feel like a second job.
Yeah, I think I started stopping
because I kind of burned out on it.
I started becoming an adult now, so I had to put all things as adulting now.
Yeah.
So no time.
And then I had more responsibilities, and I was married.
Yeah.
So I still like to sail, and I also love to be out on the water. So my solution for that is that I have a kayak. Actually, I have 2 kayaks. And so whenever I have the urge to be back on the water, I take the kayak out and throw it in the lake, and off I go. And
man, you do so many. I mean, you've done so many cool things. Yeah. I bet you're gonna say because you used to be a runner. Yeah. You've done marathons too, right?
I've never done a marathon. I did the equivalent of a half marathon on my own one day. And
no triathlons either.
No. Although I did a lot of swimming when I was in college.
That's what I was actually
competitively.
I was trying to see, because most people. I did a lot
of swimming then to just stay in shape.
Because if you do if you run and you swim and you bike, eventually you're gonna get suckered into with some friends of yours.
I sort of missed that one. Missed that boat. But
you never know.
I think I was too busy sailing, and so anyway, and so I love to go camping.
I'm a big camper. I'm a big camper. We camp maybe 4 to 6 times in the summertime when it warms up. Yeah. I just did the first one in last weekend, and we're gonna be going to Johnson Salk Trail, go to the Thompson Causeway. Yeah. We'll go to all.
That's great, and it's wonderful for the kids.
The kids they love it. When it gets hot, they're a little bit antsy, but because they run their cousins and stuff, because everybody go, the father-in-law, the mother-in-law, uncle, and all the other kids, and we go and we You know, we just have a good time. So great stuff.
And that's what I enjoy so much about bike packing is it keeps me camping.
Gotcha.
So, you know, there are a lot of cyclists who they say no to the camping part and they say they'll only stay in hotels. But I kind of like the camping too, although it can be a lot of work to ride all day and then set up camp.
I mean, Sarah, right? She said she's getting ready for Michigan Challenge. She actually slept in a thing on her Porsche just to kind of get
she's
used
got
to it.
She said, I saw that interview. She said she's doing a bivy bag.
Yeah, I was like, man, that's next level.
Which they weigh next to nothing, and you can sleep anywhere.
Wow,
those things.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, I just get that question for myself because I keep thinking about all these different questions.
Yeah.
Who are some of, because you've been there for quite some time, who are some of the guys that you know, like some of the old school legends in Chicago? Do you know the guys from like Plaza, like Murray and Jerry?
Yeah, okay, so I'll give you my group riding history if you want.
Yes, I want to know.
I started riding in Chicago with a group that no longer exists. It was called the French Toast Club. I don't know. They never stopped for French toast. I don't know what that was about, but it was a group of former racers and racers. And that's what got me into racing. And then from there, that group started to kind of fall apart. And so I started riding with the Judson group. And the Judson group, when I started, was one group. And it wasn't as fast. Well, today it's become the Lighthouse group. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't as fast then as it became. And it was a really fun group. There were the guys in there were Troy Hinikoff. I don't know if you know Troy.
Of course, I know Troy. I see Troy like almost 3-4 times a week.
A guy named Todd Weiner.
I know Todd.
Yeah,
but Todd is a runner now.
Yes, right.
From ERC,
he had to stop cycling.
I know Todd
due to an injury, but he's a wonderful guy. There was a guy, the senior member of the group is a guy named Warren Weisberg, who's now 82 years old and still riding his bike.
I don't think I know Warren.
A guy named Phil Hirsch, who's a sports writer, he's a retired sports writer for the Tribune. They're just a wonderful group.
It's so crazy you mentioned Todd.
A guy named Steve Courtright, who is not riding as much because he crashed in the Judson ride and hurt his shoulder. But so there were a lot of guys who. And I was at a dinner party last night, and I met a guy who used to ride with us on the Judson ride. So it was like a little reunion.
Oh, that must have been a nostalgia.
Yeah.
After Judson.
But what happened to Judson is Judson started attracting more and more riders. And as I was aging, the riders were getting younger and faster, and the whole group got to be very fast. And eventually, we decided it made more sense to really kind of have an A group and a B group. Although we didn't like that terminology, so we called the B group the Judson Classic. So I rode with Judson Classic for years. And that was the kind of the leader of that group, and the guy who did all the emails to keep the whole thing organized was a guy named Mike Pecknio, he was a really wonderful rider. And he was a master at controlling the speed of the group. So his trick was, if the group was starting to get a little feisty or spicy and a little out of hand, he'd go to the front, he'd ride just a little bit slower, and then he'd change the route. And these guys behind him didn't know what to do because they didn't know where they were going once we were off the regular route. And so he'd slow the whole group down that way. So it kept the group together. Kept everybody happy. Yeah, this is. He was a smart guy.
I like his style. You know what? I do the exact same thing.
Okay.
At Cortado.
Yeah.
So what happened is I know it was in the group.
Yeah.
And sometimes I see people start doing too much crazy. So I'm like, guys, we have people. We're gonna drop them. So what I do, I just go to the front.
Yeah.
And control the pace. And try to keep it where I know everybody can. Right. And then when I feel okay, I go back to the back or whatever.
Right.
And then whenever people start, I have to go back to the front again and calm the group and again. And, so smart. No, I'm changing route though because people get mad if you change the route.
Yeah. so then what happened with Judson Classic is because we were sort of the older guys in the Judson thing, we started, more and more people were attracted to the A group, less and less people were attracted to the B group. And so the B group started to struggle a bit with membership. And so we decided to merge with another group. And that was an interesting process. We merged with a group called Base 2, which relieves from the plaza. And that was not a total successful merger because there were some guys who just didn't want to change. But we sort of did it, and now it's kind of this combined Judson Classic and Base 2 group. And it's a group of older riders, probably people in their 50s, 60s. When people get to be my age, I'm 72, they start to fade. And so what you see at my age is people sort of gradually getting dropped, falling off the back, and eventually deciding they're not going to do group rides anymore. I'm pretty determined to keep going as long as I could possibly go. So I'll see what happens. But there are times I'm struggling with the pace. I have to admit it. The Monday night ride is perfect for me, but I'd like a Wednesday night ride. Forget it for me. And lately, I've been riding with the Cymet group, which is a group of racers, and they do a wonderful ride with 2 sprints. And after the sprints, they wait for the group to regroup, and then they go along at just this wonderful pace. And they're fast, and they all know what they're doing. And so it's like this trouble-free ride. So I really like that ride. I've been doing that one lately.
Oh, Cymet. Oh, yeah, Cymet, I've seen the Cymet guy. What's
Cymet is a racing team.
No, I know them, but that's with the guy that does the podcasting, right?
Rob Curtis.
Rob Curtis. Yeah, that's
and Cymet,
because Denny's told me the last time.
You know what Cymet stands for?
Tell me now, because actually she didn't know.
I just found out. Purdue Student in Mechanical Engineering Technology. That's Rob.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
And I think that Psi was like a Greek letter or something like that.
Yeah. So I think he builds wheels, and he's got that's his name of his wheels, Cymet.
Gotcha.
So anyway, so I'm still a very loyal Pony Shop member, but I kind of ride sometimes with Cymet. And Denise rides with Cymet. And so I've been kind of having fun with that group lately. I did that ride this morning.
Perfect.
And stayed in the group the whole time.
Yeah, I was too cold for me this morning.
Yeah.
Too cold.
It was cold.
Too cold. I'm telling you, this cool stuff, I'm over it. You know?
And there was a period of time I rode with, in between Judson and this French Toast group, I rode with the Plaza group. But this was years ago.
So you know,
a lot of the guys
Kathy,
are still the same.
you know Kathy, all them guys.
Yeah, and Murray and Jerry and Drew
and Scott.
I don't know. Yeah, anyway.
And Greg and wow.
Yeah. So I rode with those guys, and I just did their Saturday ride, which was super fast.
Yes.
And they left at 6:30 in the morning. I think maybe they
started today.
Yeah. And that became after a while too early in the morning for me. With work and everything else, it was like I just getting exhausted. So that's when I found Judson, which had a later start time, and a little more controlled pace. I can remember rides with Plaza when they would go way up north, and they'd be on these really busy roads. And I can remember flying down the road with them at 32 miles an hour, thinking, "What am I doing?" What is going on?
No, I bike with Plaza. I discovered them, and they're just so nice people. And then they have a beautiful pace line. Once in Waukegan, it's a pace line all the Waukegan. Then they have a sprint point and coming back down Old Plain, and they have a sprint point again, and then rotation back on Waukegan. And
they used to stop at a McDonald's way up north.
Yeah,
I don't know if they still do that.
They still stop up.
And I'm not a McDonald's fan, so.
It's funny for the coffee though.
That's what I did.
Notice they go to
they were a fun group of guys, but they were so serious.
Not so much now.
Not so much now.
I mean, they're still serious, but they're still just a little bit more mellow and stuff. I mean, I love those guys.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to get up early morning to ride, please come to Cortado.
Oh, okay.
I invited Denny's on a Friday.
On a Friday morning, okay.
But it's like 5:45. We could meet up and ride up together, and it's the Friday pace is just amazing.
Yeah.
Other than maybe from Lake Hook down and they did the bus stop sprint, but that's it. That is it. And there is just really chill.
Okay.
The rule is that if you can't hear me behind you talking, that means you're going way too fast.
Oh, okay.
So literally we go at like 18, maximum 20 miles an hour.
Right. Oh, okay.
But we are compensating the entire time.
Okay.
It's fantastic.
Great.
Cortado is like
The group, you like that group? Okay.
I love them.
Great.
And they're a bunch of nurtured dad like myself. So
Yeah.
And for me, it works because I can get up in the morning, bike, by 7:30 I'm back home, take the kids to school, and so it works for me. And then I do all the other rides in town.
Yeah.
You know, I do all of them.
Yeah.
I do all the rides where from start to finish is a sprint. Like Wednesday night ride is a sprint from you start the ride to you finish the ride. It's just constant sprinting.
Right.
But
wow.
It's fun. It's fun. Man, we've been here chatting for a long time.
Okay.
Well, what keeps you going? What's your motivation? What is it? Let us know. We learn a lot.
That's a really good question. I just love cycling. And I love being outside. And I feel so much better when I'm getting regular exercise that I'm just it's sort of become a lifestyle. And I'm going to just keep doing it as long as I physically can do it. I don't know how much longer that'll be, but we'll see. I've survived cancer. I've got a heart thing going on. You were talking about that earlier. I got a little heart thing going on. But I'm just going to keep going as long as I possibly can. And if I can't keep up with some of these groups we're talking about any longer, there are other groups around that do a little bit more reasonable pace. So there's ways to just keep going. And
there's one little thing that I've been telling myself that if it ever happened and I can't keep up with the group, I'm going to get an e-bike.
Oh, I'm going to hold off on that as long as I can. I figure the longer I hold off, the better they'll get.
Right, because Trek is an amazing e-bike, road bike. You can even tell.
No, I know.
So I am not ashamed. I'm telling you guys, I'm gonna.
You don't need it.
If you ever get to that point, I'm gonna do an e-bike just to be there and just to have a good time and hang out.
I tell you, I was in Mallorca this spring riding.
I was about to ask you because I saw you guys went.
And there's more e-bikes there than ever before. So a lot of people on e-bikes, groups of people on e-bikes.
Yeah, because the hills and all the different stuff, right?
So anyway, Mallorca is a wonderful place. I don't know if you've ever been there.
Never been, but it's on my bucket list.
It's one of those places that
go right. Everybody go there to ride. Trek Travel does their thing there, and you guys were there recently.
Yeah.
And I saw the pictures. I'm like, man, look at the knees. I want to
go. We've gone there 3 years in a row. It's like my idea of cycling heaven. It has a mountain range on one part of the island that's 70 or 80 miles long, and you can do all the climbing you want in that little mountain range. And then when you need a rest day, you can ride out on other parts of the island that are more rolling on these wonderful back roads that are, these narrow farm lanes with sheep on one side and goats on the other. And it's just wonderful. All these small towns with a church in the middle and a town square. And it's just amazing. And there's cyclists everywhere.
Wow.
And most of them are from Germany and England. That seems to be where they go in the spring.
Makes sense. I mean,
and occasionally you see a few racing teams there training. And so it's just a wonderful atmosphere.
Have you ever met like any famous cyclist in your life?
Okay, so
other than yourself.
I'm not. So this goes back a while, but there was one of the early American professional cycling teams was 7-Eleven.
I've heard them before I've heard them many times.
So there used to be a race in downtown Evanston, a Criterium, where they invite these pro teams. And so one year the 7-Eleven team came, and I actually had a chance to meet all these guys. Andy Hampston, Eric Hayden, Bob Roll, I don't know, all these guys.
Way before my time.
Yeah, what's the guy? There's the Norwegian guy who's still like a sport director. I can't remember his name. But that was fantastic. I met them all. I got their autographs. I was very excited. And what was amazing about these guys, the first thing, you kind of watch these guys on television and you think of them as these giants of the road, so to speak. And they're like these small guys. Yeah. They're like 5'7", 5'8". They're like
but they push out crazy watts.
And they just
they just stay there.
But they're these little guys and they're just powerful as hell.
They're like jockeys, but for bicycles.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I met a lot of those guys, and that was really exciting.
Wow.
I don't think I've met any other, famous pro cyclists, but that was good.
I don't think
that was good enough.
I've ever met any. I've met the Williams brother, and I've actually ridden my bicycle with Bahati.
Yeah.
Rashad Bahati. I ridden my bicycle with him from Chicago all the way to Norbrook because I saw him. I'm like, you're a black guy, I'm a black guy. I'm going that way. Who are you? Let's ride together. We rode together. We chat the entire time. He told me his name. I had no idea who he was. Yeah. And then when I went to Norbrook, everybody was like, oh my God. I'm like, I went to my man, who's this guy? And they're like, I'm like, who is he? And I had to Google him because I didn't know who he was. Yeah. And we rode the entire time, chatting, goofing around, everything.
That's fun.
And I had no idea
who he was. Yeah.
Even to me that he were the Juts and all the different things and blah blah. I'm like, I had no idea who this guy was. Because I'm new to I'm sorry again, Sean, I'm sorry. I did not know who you were because I'm new to cycling. Yeah. But you're a true legend, okay? We appreciate you. Thank you for all the stuff you're doing.
So there's two other people I could mention. So there was a woman who lived in Chicago for a while who used to come to the cyclocross practices, whose name is Lily Williams, who's now a pro cyclist in the European peloton, and she's also a track cyclist. And I think she got probably a gold medal in one of the team pursuits on the track. But she was originally from Florida, but she lived in Chicago for a while, and she used to come to these cross practices and just destroy all the men in the group. She would just be way out ahead of them all. It was amazing. But I kind of got friendly with her and had lots of interesting conversations with her. And then I also met Katie Compton, who for 16 years in a row won the U.S. National Cyclocross Championship.
Wow.
But she had sort of a difficult ending to her career because there was some doping issues happening. But she was wonderful, and you could just approach her at these races and she would just talk to you like you're a regular person, and she was wonderful.
Yeah, I'm a regular person. She talked to me.
So it was good.
Wow, amazing. Amazing.
And then I met at the track. So there used to be there still is. It's a big race in Waterloo, Wisconsin at the Trek headquarters. And they used to bring the pro cyclocross teams in. So I had a chance to but see Wout van Aert race. What's the other guy who's like, it was Wout's, Vanderpool. Got to see him race.
Wow, nice.
I got to actually meet Sven Nys, who was a director of a team at that point, but he did a clinic here in Chicago, and he was very friendly and had some great conversations with him. So you just kind of be around these guys and you say, wow.
You've done it all, man. Chicago.
Cyclocross is a very approachable sport. I mean, the spectators are right up against the course. Mm-hmm. You can practically touch. I
wanted to come to a few of them, but it was just too cold. I'm like,
So anyway, to see Wout van Aert race and to see Vanderpool and to see these guys handle their bikes, it's incredible. I don't know how they do it.
They're built for it, and they put the work in, and I mean, these guys have been biking since they were like this big,
and then
true. You've seen how they've evolved, right? I mean, you can see pictures guys were like 8 or 9, and now they're like 24, 22. You're like, it makes sense because they really pull them out from the gen pop and say, we're going to let you guys do it.
They develop them from a very early age.
So they found that they have these very special, unique, I guess, characteristics, and they develop them, and that's why these guys are good. I mean, you and I probably not have that. We probably never. I mean, I started biking when I was like 39.
So I used to do that trek. The trek, they had the pros come, and then they had amateur races. So I used to go do the amateur races and track that. So it was wonderful to race on the same course the pros were racing on. And then, so one week they'd come there, and then the next week they'd go to Iowa City, and there was a race at the Iowa City Fairgrounds, which was called Jingle Cross, which no longer is happening, but the pros would all come there. And so I would go to both of those events and race there, and then watch the pros, and that was just so much fun.
Yeah, but unfortunately, those races they're all gone now, right? The left of them don't exist as much.
I don't think the World Cup didn't come to the United States this year, right? The Trek thing is still happening, but but it's not on the same scale.
Yeah, I need to go. I need to look up some of these races. I can go watch it. Have my kids see what it's all about and experience. I want for myself because I've never really experienced. Other than going to Intelligentsia, I've never really experienced any like races and stuff.
The other thing I've just dabbled in with cyclocross is going to the national championships. I'm just an average guy, but over the age of 50, you don't have to qualify. You can just go sign up and race in the masters category. And the beautiful thing about the national championships is that you're racing, the racing categories are in 5-year increments. So you're really just racing against people your same age. And so I've gone to 5 national championships, not with any grandiose expectations of doing that well, but just to be in the race and have the experience of racing on a quality course with guys who are just amazingly fast. And so the most memorable national championship I was in Madison, Wisconsin in 2013 in January. It was January 10th.
That's cold.
It was 18 degrees. There was a foot of snow on the ground. And everything was just snow and ice.
This is my time to shine.
Yeah, actually, it was my best. It was my best result in those horrible conditions. The start was on pavement, but the pavement had big patches of ice in it, so you had to miss those as you were. And cyclocross races, as I'm sure you know, they just start out as fast as you can go. Mm-hmm. And this one particularly, you had to really be going fast to get to what they call the hole shot, because after the pavement, it was single track through the snow. There was just room for one rider at a time. So we all raced to this
bottleneck,
this little bottleneck. And I actually stayed in this group and did much better than I expected. And then then you're just in this line of riders. And what I saw happening was people just started falling. They'd go around a corner and they'd fall, and you just pass that guy. And another guy had another part of the course went around a tree, and the guy in front of me just rode straight into the tree. And I just rode past him. And then going up, there was a steep hill. It was very icy. It was very hard to keep the traction going. And at the side of this hill, off to the side, there was a whole group of guys off their bikes, putting their chains back on. They must have all tangled up with each other at the beginning. And these were all the leaders of the race.
Wow.
And so we went past all of those guys, but they, of course, caught me eventually. And so we had ice. You had a layer of snow. You had a layer of ice under the snow. You had frozen ruts. So it was the most difficult conditions you can imagine.
But this is where you shined.
And I had a pretty good race. And I crashed once. I got a little overconfident. There was a banked corner with a huge snow bank on one side, which really was not the kind of snowbank you think of. It was all granular snow, and I first few times through that corner, I did very well. I thought I was doing great. And then I got overconfident and I took the corner too fast and I crashed and I hit that snowbank, which was all this icy granular snow. It was like hitting asphalt. So I bent my derailleur. I hit on the derailleur on the drive side of the bike, bent my derailleur. Shift levers were all bent in. Chain was off. I got I got off the bike. I fixed all that as best I could. And then I got back on the bike and started out again. And I realized my shoe was unbuckled. So I had to stop and fix my shoe. And by then I had lost a few places. And then there was a series of hills after that. And I couldn't shift into my lower gears. I could kind of get to the middle of my cassette because my derailleur cage was bent.
Right.
So I struggled up these hills and I lost one place doing that, but managed pretty well the rest of the race. There was a guy ahead of me who's a famous frame builder, a guy named Richard Sachs. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Never.
He was a wonderful frame builder. He was totally into cyclocross. He was in this race, and he was maybe 2 spots ahead of me, and he crashed and actually separated his shoulder and got back on the bike and finished the race. I was really impressed.
You guys are tough as nails, man. Man, it's wild.
So that was kind of a wild race. That was my favorite cyclocross race of all time.
Wow. So it sounds good. You remember you have this very vivid memory.
Yeah.
Of like step by step what happened.
Oh,
so it must have been
I can remember the whole race.
Whole race. But man,
there was a point in the race where you had a downhill to a series of stair steps, long series of stair steps. At the bottom of the approach to the stair steps, it was total ice. And so I was coming down this hill, watching all these guys in front of me just falling. And so I dismounted before the ice, got across the ice on foot,
jump back on the bike.
And then up the stair steps, and then jump back on the bike.
Wow!
Anything can happen in these races. That's what's so fun about it.
Yeah. I mean, I could sit here and listen to you talk all day long, about all these amazing experiences. I mean, this is what for somebody who's been riding since 1968. And just to see how everything has transpired in Chicago, for the change over the years, and the amount of knowledge that you have and things you have seen. I mean, I can't even imagine. As we come to the end, guys, I'd love to talk some more and just keep on going.
Okay.
But as we come to the end, anything you want to leave us with before we wrap up?
I just want to share a comment that one of these former racers in this French Toast Club told me that I've never forgotten. He said, in terms of riding throughout the year, he said, never stop riding. Because if you like stop for the winter, it's so much work to get back in shape. Just keep riding. He said, just never stop. And so that's my goal.
Just keep riding. That is it. Just keep riding one stroke at a time.
Right.
And that's about it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Guys,
okay.
Ed Reed is in the house. We learned so many things today from 1968 to 2025. Every time I keep looking at him, I keep reminding me of Sean Connery. He comes to mind. I'm like, it was Sean Connery.
I don't have the right accent.
The Sean Connery of bikes.
There we go.
Amazing, guys.
Well, thank you very much.
Ed is in the network.
Okay.
He's seen it all, guys. If you see him, I see him now. So now we're going to be like biking buddies now. So plus we're Denny's connection. But guys, he's a network, and this is again what makes Chicago a beautiful place. He has been here from the beginning. He's been here, and he's seen how the sport has evolved, all the different ups and downs in the sport, and we learned so much about him. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. I'm happy we met, and I told him it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I was busy, he was busy, and I could do other things going on, but we made it happen, guys. So keep it going, keep on riding,
and never stop.
And as I would say, keep the miles and smiles going. Until we meet again, guys. Right. One love.